people would be brought in these camps, they'd be handed a telephone, and they'd be told, you need to raise $2,000 for your freedom, or we will either kill you or you will die here.
Some of the human traffickers, those who are the big investors, they also have link with some government officers. So these government officers, they protect their business.
What is human trafficking? Human trafficking is a modern-day slavery. It is the exploitation of a person through forced fraud or coercion. Human smuggling and human trafficking are different crimes. Human smuggling is the illegal movement of someone across a border. Human trafficking is the illegal exploitation of a person. Human trafficking is a highly profitable crime and a violation of human rights. It occurs in every part of the world, especially in Southeast Asia countries. It happens in our big city, our suburbs, and even in rural towns. It can happen to anyone. Human trafficking victim can be anyone from any countries. Victim can be any age, race, or gender. 2019 Global Report on Trafficking in Person reported that more than 85% of victims were trafficked across the region. Among them, Malaysia and Thailand were human traffickers' destination from neighboring countries. 51% of the victims in the region were women, and nearly a third of the victims were children. Based on the statistics from the United Nations Crime Trend Survey, Vietnam, the Philippines and Thailand have ranked top in the total numbers of detected victims since 2007.
Factors that lead towards human trafficking in Southeast Asia. One of the most significant elements contributing to the rise of human trafficking is a lack of genuine economic alternative. Human traffickers prey on people mostly owing to inequitable resource distribution and a lack of reliable means of income. Families are poor in terms of assets and wages. Due to poor living conditions and a lack of infrastructure, citizens are easy targets.
সতেরো 18 দিনের বেশি তাহলে এত খরচ ওঠে না, এত সংসার চালাবো কি দিয়ে, মানুষই দিন দিন শোধ করবো কি দিয়ে।
For example, traffickers in Myanmar Rakhine State deceive victims by offering them transportation to overseas labor market only to sell them for money or slave them. The other factor is demand for forced labor. Around 2.5 million people in Southeast Asia have been enslaved through modern slavery. 4 ASEAN countries such as Thailand, Cambodia, Brunei and Myanmar are among the top 10 ASEAN countries with the biggest number of individuals working in the most horrible conditions. Victims of human trafficking are frequently forced to perform various forms of work against their choice, limiting their rights and movement. Victims of forced labor are regularly used to fill low-wage roles in industries such as fishing, agriculture, and manufacturing. The next factor is conflict and natural disaster. Human traffickers take advantage of conflict and natural calamities to recruit victims. The conflict in Myanmar Rakhine State undoubtedly drives Rohingya trafficking. According to the United Nations, the Rohingya people are one of the world's most persecuted minorities. In 2014, Rakhine had a population of 1 to 1.5 million Rohingya Muslims and 2 million Rakhine Buddhists. Due to the conflict, it has resulted in a number of injuries and deaths, as well as property destruction and the displacement of 140,000 people since 2012.
Poverty, addiction, gang involvement, and also organ trafficking are issues or problems that arise from human trafficking. First, we will look into poverty. Poverty has played the important roles in human trafficking. Due to the poverty, the traffickers are able to get their way in human trafficking. Traffickers will first target their victims who live in extreme and intense poverty because they are easy to manipulate. Just by throwing sweet promises such as high salary and easy job, it will automatically attract these poor victims to follow them. Next, Human traffickers also use trucks to tie up the victim close to them. The traffickers will first distribute the truck around the victim's area which they has targeted from the alley. Then, after the victims became addicted and could not think straight and willing to do anything, the traffickers will then start playing their plot by taking the victim as a forced labor and lie to them about the free supply of drugs as payment. Sadly, this kind of schemes to be taken by the victim. Then we have gang involvement. Gang involvement exists among the human trafficking members. This illegal activity requires a large number of people to make sure that the victim being abducted successfully. Starting from the kidnapping activities or spreading info activities or purchase drug activities until the purpose activity of human trafficking, a small group of people are needed. Lastly, we have organ trafficking with us. Other than prostitution, child labor, or forced labor, organ trafficking is also one of the main activities of human trafficking. Since the buyer of these organs are from the rich people, the demand price for an organ is expensive, which is why the traffickers want to do this illegal activity.
Ori ne duceam într-o cameră ca să vadă cum ne comportăm din punct de vedere sexual.
Now let's look at the impact of human trafficking. First is individual. Individuals are affected by the impacts of human trafficking in many aspects of their life. Before being trafficked, victims of human trafficking often face abuse, exploitation, poverty, and bad health. Their experience as victims of crime have only added to their suffering. Human trafficking, unlike other kinds of violent crime, frequently leads to long-term and recurring trauma. Next is politics. Human trafficking has now grown to the point that influences the internal and international policy in most countries where the issue has gained prominence. Human trafficking requires the movement of humans over international borders. Hence, migration policy is one of the most contentious issues. Lastly is economic. When quantifying the economic consequences of human trafficking, the problem in quantifying its effect are most apparent. The worth of all resources spent on its prevention, treatment and assistance of victims, and the detection and punishment of criminals are all factors in calculating the cost of human trafficking. These expenses may be partially mitigated by recovering illegal profits and traffickers' assets.
The initiative and effort of the Asian country to prevent human trafficking in Southeast Asia are firstly is increased awareness campaign, secondly is legislation and prosecution of human trafficking offense, and thirdly is protection of victims. Increased human trafficking and its link to human rights violations have been the subject of public awareness efforts at all levels of society, focusing on the most vulnerable people's participation of the media and important non-governmental community of organization leaders, non-profit, and the private sector. These are the country's increased funding for government and non-profit shelter programs that provide specialized shelter and psychosocial care to children and men who have been victims. Moreover, Asian countries also can step up efforts to locate and identify victims of human trafficking of child. ASEAN is concentrating on efforts to investigate suspect incidents of human trafficking. Republic of the Philippines Act number 9208 is an action taken to develop strategies aimed at eliminating human trafficking, particularly of children and women. The purpose of this act is to establish the appropriate institutional system for traffic victim support and protection. Reaffirm the importance of promoting and protecting human rights for all human trafficking victims, as well as measures that are effective to combat human trafficking are mutually reinforcing and complementary. In addition, initiated a private discussion. Others should be encouraged and empowered and believe the individual. Pay attention to what they have to say and what they are concerned about. Make an investment in their abilities and also confirm their feelings. Do not point the finger at the victim. After that, take their anxiety seriously and offer assistance.
Blue Campaign is a national public awareness campaign designed to educate the public, law enforcement, and other industry partners to recognize the indicators of human trafficking and how to appropriately respond to possible cases. Located within the Office of Partnership and Engagement and aligned with the DHS Center for Country Human Trafficking, Blue Campaign leverages partnerships with the private sector.
Security created the Blue Campaign to take a stand against modern-day slavery and help combat this heinous crime by raising awareness of human trafficking around the country. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. So what can you do to stop human trafficking? Visit the Blue Campaign website to learn more about the signs and indicators of human trafficking. Share this video on social media to help bring this crime out of the shadows.
Asian youth, gambling, and child prostitution and trafficking, or expat fundraisers, giving a child the opportunity to have a childhood free of violence and sexual exploitation. Expat will use the funds to develop educational and preventive materials for young people. In Chiang Mai, northern Thailand, a small group of concerned persons gathered in May 1990 to establish Expat Global Campaign to prevent child sexual exploitation. Organizations from all over the world responded to this call to action by banding together to help combat this heinous problem. Through the Child and Youth Advisory Committee, Expat International involves children and youth in its governance.